My grandfather has been a big part of my life since I was born. Having spent a lot of time with him growing up, I've come to know him as a pun-loving, riddle-telling, compassionate and caring man who is always up to spinning a good story. But there's a side to his own story that I'm not so familiar with. It's a story that has taken me on a journey of tragedy, faith and self-worth. This is my granddad's deadly story.
My name is William Alec Hollingsworth. I'm known by many as Pastor Bill or Uncle Bill. 80 and a half years old, born in Mossman, but spent most of my life in the Cairns Innisfail area. Well, as I said, I was born in Mossman, and in 1933, out in the sticks, as it were, in Myallo, there was mother and father and 3 sons at that time when I was born, and then Frank arrived a couple of years later, and then Bob later on still. But we grew up out in the bush and spent most of our lives out there. Rarely went into town except, well, I didn't remember anyway, but my mother used to. I was very sick as a child, and she'd spend a lot of time taking me in and out of hospital or leaving me there. And my childhood was such that the doctors thought and told her that it's probable that I wouldn't live to more than 12 years of age. So I had the pleasure on my 80th birthday of going back to the Mossman Hospital and observing the labour room and everything where I was born, and they gave me a tour of the hospital in a wheelchair this time. So it was from the cradle to the wheelchair. But it was an amazing experience. In 1940, when the war broke out and things got a bit close to home, we shifted down to Cairns, onto Babinda, Harvey Creek area. Went to school at McDonald Creek, and then shifted into Cairns. Went to school at Parramatta, lived in the bungalow area, and it was during that time that my father caught a rail motor to Babinda, supposedly to do some cooking for a gang of cane cutters out there. And unfortunately, things didn't turn out the way they were anticipated. They were at the railway crossing. There's a shop there in Babinda, if you know the area. They went to the shop when the rail motor pulled out from the station, so they raced across to try and jump on the running board of the rail motor. The other chap made it, but Dad didn't. He slipped and went under the wheels and had both his legs chopped off. So, and he passed away that night in the hospital. So that left Mum with 5 boys and no income. Myself, because of our moving around and the loss of father and so on, I only reached grade 5 in primary. That was about the limit of my formal education. But in spite of that, I think I've done pretty well. Been able to go out and work in the wider world. I worked on the railway a fair bit. I'd worked down on the low coast most of the time, but then we were shifted up to Kuranda. And when I told them I was shifting up to Kuranda, a lady said to me, she said, "You watch out for Ruth Brim up there when you go up. She's liable to catch you." And eventually she did. I attribute my being blessed in that because of my faith in Jesus Christ. He's my Saviour and Lord, and I count that as the greatest event that's happened in my life. And married to Ruth is the second 54 years of marriage, and 7 children. Unfortunately, we lost 2 boys, but still we've had a very good life, I believe. Yeah, I suppose people find this hard to believe, you know, but I still have to share it because it's a part of my life. I believe the Lord spoke to me and said, sit down for 12 months. I said, well, that's a tall order because I've got a wife and 7 kids and I've got a house to rent to pay and a car to pay off and all these sorts of things. So I was then moved to go to the Bible and see what King David had to say. And he said, once I was young and now I'm old, yet I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. So I said, okay, I'll do it. You know, for 12 months, I had no work, but every need was supplied. It was like living on razor's edge or whatnot, but that was what I experienced. I was offered a job with alcohol rehabilitation. So I went into that then, started working with rehabilitating alcoholics at the AIARS. Now that went on for 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, the National Aboriginal Conference elections came up. And a friend of mine said to me, Bill, why don't you nominate for the NAC? And I brushed it off as a joke. Old Al Ware and his daughter Grace, they were convinced that I should go. And so a week before the election, they nominated me and I got elected. So that then started me on a different course. Because I'd only gone to grade 5 in primary school, you know, it appeared that I wouldn't be able to achieve much in life unless I had a higher education. I believe in creation and that God never made junk. And if he said he made us in his image, then we all have the capacity to do whatever God has appointed us to be capable of doing. And so that was my belief that I could still do things, that whether I had an formal education or not.
So we are rushing, but when she walks in, her face greets 100 smiles.